So I have a couple new products, Metal Marshmallow Morsel and Metal Marshmallow Roaster. And the easiest way for me to explain them is by comparison to Metal Marshmallow Pro, which I guess is my best-selling contact microphone. And you might already know that Metal Marshmallow Pro has a contact mic sensor and a contact mic preamplifier inside of there. And now what I've done is separate those out. So Morsel is just the sensor portion of the contact mic, and Roaster is just the preamp portion of the mic. So all of this is kind of what's crammed inside of there, and these are intended to be used together, but separating them out allowed me to include a couple extra features that just really won't fit in Pro. And I'll tell you what some of those features are in just a moment, but first I just want to show you how to use this. So you need to stick the sensor to whatever you're trying to record, and I usually use white poster putty or double-sided tape for that. Then you need to plug the sensor into the microphone input in the preamplifier, like so. And then the other side of the preamplifier needs to be plugged into a microphone input on a recording interface or mixer or something like that. Then you have to turn phantom power on. That's what powers the preamp. Then I'd recommend setting the audio interface input gain to 0 decibels if it's labeled, and then adjust the preamp to the desired gain setting, which I already did off camera. And that's it. You can just start recording. And by the way, that was just the raw audio from the contact mic. Sometimes I sweeten these recordings up in post a little bit by adding reverb or whatever, but I'm trying to be clear about when I do that. Okay, so anyway, let's look at these in more detail. So this is Morsel. It's basically a piezo disc inside of a shielded aluminum housing connected via a cable to a 3.5 millimeter TRS plug. And the sleeve of the plug connects to the shielding, and then the piezo disc outputs a differential signal on the tip and ring. And I know that a lot of cheap piezos tend to use a TS style plug, but this kind of implies that either it's not properly shielded or it doesn't have differential output, or probably both. But one way or another, this is going to end up picking up a lot of unwanted electromagnetic interference. And the more I think about it, I think this is just the wrong way of doing it. So then Morsel also has thinner cable compared to Pro, and this is something a lot of people have asked about. And I know what you're thinking, Mike, you can get thinner cable than that. Well, at some point I did actually build this prototype that has this very thin Mogami mic cable, and this is a great cable, but contact mics are a bit special, and so of course I wanted to test this, so I draped a power lead across the mic cables like this, and this is probably the worst case scenario. Like, some of this 60 hertz signal from the power lead is bound to leak into the audio cables, and I didn't actually save the audio files, but I just recorded a little bit through the microphones and plotted the output. So the ultra thin Mogami cable is in blue, and you can see there's this huge 60 hertz peak, which is basically audio leaking in from the power cable. And worse, there are even more peaks at each harmonic of 60 hertz. So let me do a dramatic reenactment of what that sounded like. It was like brrrr. Very nasty sounding. Then the Canare cable, which is the one that I did end up using, is plotted in blue, and there is a little peak at 60 hertz, but that might be more from my janky setup. I don't think that necessarily came through the cable, but importantly, there are no peaks at the harmonics. And actually, I couldn't hear this at all when I was listening to it, even with my headphones all the way up. So this is the thinnest cable that I could find that still has this sort of superior EMI rejection. But of course, Pro is probably still even better than this, since this cable basically doesn't exist. It's just an internal connection inside of the housing. And that makes me reflect on how even a simple product like this is really difficult to get it right, because the devil's in the details. And I know there are like 1,000 products like this on eBay or whatever, but I guarantee you there's a large variety in quality. Remember to like and subscribe. Anyway, so then this is Roaster. It's mostly the same as the preamp that's in Metal Marshmallow Pro. So for example, they have the same gain adjustment, although I did finally put an indicator on this one, which a lot of people asked for. Anyway, turning the gain all the way up makes the mic so sensitive that it's almost unusable, but if you're careful about it, you can record extremely quiet sounds. And this is the same as turning Pro all the way up, and I've already shown that recording things like caterpillars eating leaves, and snow falling on glass, which require this very high gain. And here's a new one. I was recently trying to record ocarina, and when I make teeny tiny movements with my fingers, it sounds like this. I could be wrong, but I'm convinced that that's the sound of my joints creaking. Like it's the sound of my tendons moving over my bones or something. And in fact, the mic picks up some of the finger type noises even louder than it picks up the ocarina itself. So all that's to say that this might not be the best way of recording ocarina, but with the gain all the way up like that, it is a fantastic way of recording these minuscule, inaudible sounds that probably couldn't be recorded by any other means. It's like a microscope for sound. So then if I turn the gain back down to 0 decibels, well, Roaster is still the same as Pro with its gain all the way down, and that's about the correct level for recording acoustic guitar. Ah, yeah, you like that, you freaks? So that is just about the loudest sound you can record with Metal Marshmallow Pro. Anything louder than that will cause the internal preamp to clip. And it isn't just Pro. I made a whole separate video showing that piezos can output crazy high voltages, higher than really any audio equipment can handle. So for very loud sounds, you will have to attenuate it first, which is what this negative 24 decibel switch on Roaster is for. And with this switch set to negative 24 decibels and the gain all the way down, this is great for recording percussion in particular. I don't think the video properly conveys this, but I'm really hitting that hard. Anyway, here's djembe. By the way, that sounds way more realistic than the camera mic does. Yeah, it just sounds like dropping a book on the floor. I mean, what the hell is even that? And back when we were prototyping, we put Morsel on a snare, and it can output 80 volts peak to peak. So with the gain set to 0 decibels, in other words, without the input attenuation, it sounds like this. Actually, I guess that doesn't really sound that bad, but you can see the peaks are very clipped. Then with the negative 24 decibel switch engaged, it sounds like this. So now it isn't clipped at all, even with this extremely high voltage piezo disc signal. And we also tested a prototype on piano with the mic on the soundboard. And I could not make the internal preamp clip, even playing as loud as possible. So then Roaster and Pro both have a frequency response that on the high end goes up to hundreds of kilohertz, although I can't really demonstrate that since this thing has a max sample rate of 192 kilohertz, which records frequencies only up to 96 kilohertz maximum. But here's a supersonic dog bark deterrent that I recorded at the highest frequency I could and then pitch shifted it down 2 octaves. Then on the low end, Morsel has a little bit better subsonic frequency response than Pro. Pro starts rolling off around 20 Hz, but Roaster is flat all the way down to about 0.1 Hz. And together with the 24 decibel attenuation, this means that I can just press on the sensor with my fingers, even as hard as I can, and I get a nice clean waveform. But still, this thing doesn't go down anywhere near 0.1 Hz, so I'm still limited by that. Oh, and one final note is that Morsel is a lot easier to clamp than Pro. That's also something a lot of people have asked about. Anyway, I guess my final assessment is that Pro isn't that different from Morsel plus Roaster, at least at normal kind of audio frequencies and amplitudes. Roaster is definitely better for recording really loud sounds, and it might also be better for recording like really low subsonic frequencies if you have audio equipment that can handle it. But I still think Pro is probably better for field recording since it's kind of just one thing and doesn't require any extra cables or anything like that. Anyway, so I also wanted to show you another product that I've been working on. This is basically a stereo reprogrammable guitar pedal for contact mics, and it's designed to be used with Morsel. And I was thinking that I might try to do a Kickstarter to try to mass produce these at some point. So if you'd at least hypothetically be interested in that, please leave a comment down below and let me know. Otherwise, there's definitely going to be a video about it at some point. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. It's going to be awesome. Anyway, I guess that's all I have to say about that for now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.